Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for a live talk with Katie, who is a Youth Engagement Officer at the Marine Conservation Society, which is the UK's leading marine conservation charity. It's so great to see many of you schools joining us today, and we're going to give a shout out to some of you. Sorry, we probably won't get to all of you. We've got Smardham Primary, hello, St Teresa's in Colchester, Cherry Tree Primary School, we've got Badger Hill Academy. Oh, I've got to say this one, the Elephants and Giraffes at Warfield Primary School, hello. Godshill Primary School, Longfields Primary School, St Teresa's, I think I've already mentioned you, so many coming in here, but hello to you all and thank you for joining us. To celebrate National Careers Week, Katie will explain about her unusual route she took into the conservation world and how she gained experience working with some of the most endangered species on the planet, all very exciting. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat and Katie will aim to answer as many as she can at the end of the talk. So that's enough from me. You want to hear from Katie, so I'll hand over to her. Good afternoon, Katie.
Hello, Lisa, and hello everybody who's watching from school or from home. It's lovely to be here today. So as Lisa said, my name's Katie McFarlane and I am the Youth Engagement Officer for the Marine Conservation Society. So I really appreciate you coming along today and look forward to lots and lots of questions by the sounds of things. So what we're going to do is I'll talk a little bit about the organisation, what I do for a job, and some of the other jobs I've had in my past, as Lisa said, and just some thoughts and ideas of how you can maybe use your skills if you want to work with animals or work in the environment later in life. So you might know this already, but just in case you're wondering, the word careers, that just means that's just a kind of fancy word for a job or something that you work in to earn money. And conservation is a word that's used when you're talking about protecting or looking after or saving, in this case, you know, animals and the environment. And just at the bottom there as well, you'll see for any teachers or adults who've got Twitter, this is my personal Twitter account and the Marine Conservation Society Twitter. So we'd really love to see some pictures of you guys or some feedback from today's session. If you can tag us on Twitter, that would be amazing. So first of all, maybe you've been talking about this beforehand, before you came on the call, but what does the Marine Conservation Society actually do? What does it mean? So the word marine is basically anything to do with the seas or the ocean. As I said, conservation is protecting or looking after, and society is just a word basically for a group of people. So it's a group of people who are working towards looking after the ocean, and particularly around about the United Kingdom. But simply put, we are a UK charity, so we're fighting for a cleaner, better protected, healthier ocean, one that we can all enjoy. So I hope that you and your teachers will get the chance to look on our website after this call and learn a little bit more about what we do. Now, one of the best things about the organisation, I think, are all the amazing people that are involved. So we're spread across the whole of the UK and the overseas territories. So you might be able to spot some turtles in these photos. Some of my colleagues are lucky enough to get to spend time in the overseas territories, so in the Caribbean, but we do get turtles around about the UK as well. But we have lots and lots of volunteers and amazing staff. And you might recognise some famous faces up the top left there. There's King Charles has actually been our former Prince Charles has been our president for many years. So we work with loads of different celebrities, famous people, and amazing schools like yourself and volunteers across the whole of the UK. We're a really passionate bunch of people and everyone has got the same interest and goal of looking after the ocean. But I'm just going to start with a little game. So first of all, I'm going to say a few statements. And if you think the statement is true, I want you to give a big thumbs up to your teacher or to your classmates. And if you think it's false, give a thumbs down. So we'll test this again, maybe a bit further down the road. So the first question or statement is, the ocean is important to all of life on Earth. So all animals and people. If you think that's true, give a thumbs up. If you think it's false, give a thumbs down. The next statement is, we don't have any sharks around about the UK. So if you think that's true, thumbs up. If you think it's false, thumbs down. And the final one, just to test you, is all seas and rivers and waterways are connected to the ocean. Do you think that's true? Put your thumbs up. False. thumbs down. So over the next few slides, I'll be talking a wee bit about these topics, but listen carefully and you'll maybe be able to get the answers. So what does the ocean actually do for us? Do you think it's very important in our life? I'm just going to play this little video to help explain.
What did the ocean ever do for us? We all know that the ocean's really big, but does it really make a difference to our lives? Let's think about this for a moment. Did you know that every second breath you take comes from the ocean? That's because it's full of tiny plant-like organisms called phytoplankton. These produce about 50% of the oxygen we breathe. Not only that, the ocean is central to the water cycle, which provides us with fresh water to drink. So that's two of the major things humans need to survive covered: oxygen and water. Our climate on Earth is also controlled by the ocean, as ocean currents move heat around the world. As the ocean covers 70% of the Earth, it's vital to international trade and travel. So most of the big items in your home, like washing machines and fridges, and even cars, have probably been transported across the seas from where they were made. Worldwide, the ocean provides an important source of food and medicines, and many people make a living from the ocean too. As well as all this, being near the ocean is great for our health and well-being. When we spend time at the beach, enjoying water sports, building sandcastles, or eating ice creams, we're happier and more relaxed. So, does the ocean really make a difference to our lives? The ocean is vital to us, but we're not looking after it. It's time to make a change. What will you do to make a difference?
So hopefully after watching that, you will have had your thumbs up with the first question earlier on along the lines of the ocean is very, very important to us. And these images here just show you some of the amazing wildlife we actually have round about the UK. So there's so many different amazing species that we might not see as often because the water's a bit cold, we might not be out in it, but there's so much exciting things to discover. So there are about 50 to 80% of all life on Earth is found in the ocean. And as I said, we have amazing creatures all around the UK. So one of the other questions I asked earlier on our statements was, do we have sharks round about the UK? Now you might be able to spot in one of these pictures, there's a little cat shark. So we actually have over 30 species of sharks living around about the UK. We have loads and loads of different jellyfish. The jellyfish have actually been on Earth since before the dinosaurs existed, so they're a really cool species to learn about. We have different types of dolphins, whales. Yes, we have whales that live around about the UK, and seals that obviously live on land, but they rely on the sea to fish and get their food. So all sorts of different amazing species that I hope you'll find really interesting and learn a wee bit more about. But one important point as well that we like to make at the Marine Conservation Society is if you imagine you're an astronaut in space and you are looking at the bottom of planet Earth, so looking at Antarctica from the bottom up, might look a little bit like this. Now, if we could take this image and kind of flatten it out, it would look like this. So this is actually a map of the Earth as if you would see it from the bottom up. This is Antarctica here, and this is Australia and Africa and the United Kingdoms up here. But the reason I'm showing you this picture is to remind you and tell everybody that it's actually one big ocean. So you'll hear me use the word ocean and not oceans, because it is all connected. So something, if you drop a packet of crisps in a river near where you live, it might float out to the sea and might end up on the other side of the planet. So that's why it's so important that we do what we can round about our homes and round about the UK, because that helps protect the whole of the ocean. And another point as well, while the astronauts hang in there, is we actually know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the ocean. So there's still so much to learn and so much to discover, which is why we need people like you who are enthusiastic. And when you grow up, you can maybe work to protect it as well. Now, at the Marine Conservation Society, we focus on a few different areas of work. I'll just talk about them quickly. So one of them is protecting our ocean or ocean recovery. So we want to restore and look after all the different species that live there and the habitats that are there. A lot of you might like to eat seafood. So you might like to eat fish and chips or seafood at home. So we try and make sure that that's sustainable, which means basically that there's enough for everyone forever. So we want the fishing communities and the sea and all the creatures that live there to live in harmony. And we also talk about clean seas as well, which I'll mention in a wee second. Now, one thing you can do in your school or at home, which I'll mention again in a wee while, is use our Good Fish Guide. So what we've done is we've created this traffic light system, and it's an app, or you can look at it on our website. So if you are in the shop looking at seafood for sale, you can look up the type of fish or seafood that is on the shelf, and it will be either red, amber or green. It looks a bit blue there, but it's supposed to be a green circle. And that means that you can choose the best sourced seafood for your school or for your whole house at home. Another area that we work in to try and stop is marine litter. So I'm sure a lot of you have learned a lot about plastic in particular and how it's a big problem for the ocean, but there are all sorts of different other pollutants like chemicals that are causing big problems. And again, if you look on our website, you'll be able to learn a wee bit more about it. Even better, if you want to get involved in a beach clean or a river clean, you can get in touch with us and you can book your school to come out with us on a beach clean or for a day out. Now, what I'm going to talk about, we'll come back to the Marine Conservation Society side of things in a minute, but what I'm going to talk about now is conservation in general. So some of you watching might be really interested in working with animals when you're older, or working outdoors. So I wanted to talk a wee bit about a few of my friends who work in different jobs in conservation around the world. And then I'll tell you a bit about what I've done as well before I got this job. So this is my friend Julian. He works for an organisation called the Giraffe Conservation Foundation, and he actually gets to spend loads of his time out in the wild on the ground, not just jumping for photographs, but looking after giraffes, looking for different subspecies. And yep, that is a lorry full of giraffes there as well. Sometimes they have to transport them and move them around different reserves in order to protect them. So if you'd like to do really practical outdoor work, you might be able to do something like that either in the UK or abroad when you're older. But it's also really important to look after the habitats or the landscapes that the animals live in. So if they don't have a home, then they're not going to be able to thrive and do really well. So again, you could maybe work planting trees or looking after plants in the landscape that is around you at home. If any of you are interested in maybe becoming a vet, this is my friend Romaine, who's actually a exotic animal vet or a wildlife vet. So he studied for many years, obviously, to get to this point, but he works all over the world in loads of zoos and aquariums, but also with wildlife organisations, and he works with a lot of animals that live in the wild. So all these animals are obviously have just been put to sleep to get little bit operations and things in these photos, but it shows you the variety of cool animals that he actually gets to work with and help protect. So if you'd like to care for animals, if they're sick or injured when you're older, maybe you could get into become a vet or a veterinary nurse. There's a lot of practical work. So if any of you like getting outdoors and getting dirty, then it would be ideal to work in conservation. So that could involve my friend Laura here in the picture. She's a diver. And so if you really like swimming and you'd like to get into diving when you're older, you could go and help kind of gather information under the water and identify species. If you'd like to work with animals maybe more on land, you could be perhaps a zookeeper. And that involves getting food together. You can see here for these little tortoises and feeding them every day, looking after them, cleaning up all the poo. If any of you've got pets at home, then you'll know what it's like to look after animals. But also there's lots of opportunity in conservation to learn, and my job, which I'll talk about in a minute, is all about educating and teaching people. So if you would like to work in that kind of area when you're older as well, you can speak to me at another time. Now, as I said, my job is Youth Engagement Officer, so I work with young people across the whole of the UK and I teach them all about marine conservation. But if we go back about 30 years, when I was a little girl, as this 4-year-old Katie on a beach on the west coast of Scotland, which is where I live, and I was quite a shy little girl. I didn't really like getting up in front of the class to talk. I didn't really like having to stand up and speak out. I really loved dinosaurs. I was particularly fascinated with dinosaurs and wanted to go and dig them up and find them. I also was really interested in art. I'm going to say really interested in art and design, and I like drawing and painting. I'm from a big musical family, so I created loads of music as well growing up. And my family quite often would take us out to gardens or parks or nature reserves or to the beach. So I spent a lot of time outdoors. Unrelated, but I also was really interested in dancing. I was a ballet dancer from when I was 5 till I was 14, and that was a huge part of my life. I really loved it. And I also just really like to get outdoors and cycle with my friends. So every day after school in the summer, I would be out on my bike with groups of friends, just outdoors. A final thing, which I also was really important in my childhood, was I had loads and loads of pets. My mum and dad were really, really generous and allowed us to have loads of different pets growing up. So that really encouraged me to my love of animals and looking after them in particular. But as I got older, each of these areas that I was interested in, have all been relevant. Being on a stage and performing, doing dancing, for example, that gave me the confidence to stand up in front of people now and talk. It's allowed me to get used to being in front of an audience. The art and design, every day I have to design all sorts of cool creative resources and PowerPoints and presentations and things for you all to watch. So it's all really important and really relevant. But when I was a bit older, when I was 17, I went to university, and I just wanted to show you a few pictures of this because I think there's probably a few of you like me who are quite interested in dinosaurs and digging them up. Now, I didn't go and study paleontology, but I studied archaeology at university. So this is the study of humans. So I got to go and do loads of excavations and dig things up all around Europe. This is obviously a sheep jawbone, but so I got to excavate loads of animals that lived around about humans as well, but no dinosaurs yet. But it was really great to go to university and study this, and I also volunteered loads with loads of different organisations. So I was really interested in working with animals, but I love my history as well, and I really liked working with young people and children. So I did things like I volunteered at Edinburgh Zoo, teaching people all about the animals that lived there. When I left uni, I went to work in a museum. So I worked in the National Museum of Scotland in Edinburgh, which has got all sorts of information in it about history and animals and science and technology, everything you can imagine. And I worked there for years teaching people about all of these topics, but I still had it in the back of my mind that I really loved working with animals. And I used to think, how can I get this job? What can I do? It was so, there weren't very many jobs going in the area working with animals. So what I decided to do was, I was very lucky. I got one of 12 places on a course that was being run all the way across the world, near Africa, near Madagascar, in a little island called Mauritius. And I want to show you some pictures from there as well, because it illustrates all the different jobs and careers you can have in conservation. Mauritius is a bit sunnier and warmer than my native Scotland, and it was a beautiful place to spend 6 months. While I was there, I got to work with loads and loads of different animals. So I did a bit of work with marine conservation with whales and dolphins, but it was mostly with land animals like birds and giant tortoises and lizards and fruit bats, as you can see in the picture. So it was a really amazing opportunity, and I gained loads of hands-on experience, as you can see, working with these animals and looking after them. So these were all wild animals that we were helping care for, so we were protecting the environment that they lived in. So it was a lot of really practical work, a lot of physical work, and even though it did look like this a lot of the time, it was really sunny and beautiful. It's also important to note that if you do want to work in conservation when you're older, it's a lot of hard work as well. These were some of the little houses and camps that I stayed in, which were very basic. Some of them had no electricity. Some of them had no running showers. One of them had an outdoor toilet. There was no toilet indoors. So I love that. I'm really happy in those situations because I'm in nature. But it's just to be aware of these things when you're thinking about careers in the future, that the practical work can be quite hard. And if anyone's not a fan of spiders, you can see in the image there were all sorts of bugs and beasties that were living in the camps with us. And yes, that is a lizard in a teacup. So we used to have lizards in the kitchen and all sorts, which is quite funny. But when I came back to Scotland from Mauritius, I was trying to find a job that I loved, and I realised that I really loved communicating with people and teaching children in particular. So over the next few years, I was really lucky. I got to work in an aquarium and a safari park and in the education department. So I got to work up close with the animals and do things like give baby rhinos mud baths, but I also was teaching people all day, every day about them. So all this knowledge and all these skills that I'd built up communicating with young people and working with animals was it was growing and growing as the years went on in my different jobs. And if any of you are interested in working with any of the animals you can see on the screen, you can ask questions at the end because I can give advice and give top tips on how to work with these animals as well. But my job just now works in marine conservation. So what I do on a day-to-day basis is I go around different parts of the UK and I teach children and young people about the marine world and about what they can do to make a difference. So the main goal for me on a day-to-day basis is to encourage you to take positive action for our ocean and chat to you about what you can really do to make a difference. Now, if you go to Brownies or Scouts or Girl Guides, for example, or if you go to any other kind of organisations outside of school, we can also come and visit you there and I can teach them. But I work with 5 to 25-year-olds, so a big age range, as I say, across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. But again, if I think back, all these skills that I developed over the years were really useful and really helpful. So just to think about what skills I had before we think about maybe your own skills. I am quite a hard worker. I worked hard in school and I worked hard at university, but I also worked hard outdoors in physical situations where it's sometimes rainy and horrible. I do like spending time outdoors though. In this picture on the left, you can see is me out with my friend on a canoe, and I do that in my spare time. I really love to spend as much time as possible out in nature. It's been useful that I was good at art at school because I have to create things all the time. And as I said, even though I don't dance and perform music in my current role, it was really useful in those early years that I was used to getting up on a stage, because now I have to talk to hundreds of people at a time sometimes, and it's really good practice. There's a lot of time spent on the computer. There's a lot of admin work and a lot of paperwork you've got to do. So it's good that I've got quite good computer skills that, again, I've developed over the years. So if you're into working on a computer, that's very, very good. And I am hopefully good at talking to people and being friendly as well, which is always helpful. I like to learn. We continue to learn throughout the whole of our life. You never stop learning, even when you finish school. So that's a positive thing, I think. And I think I'm a good helper. So a lot of the work that I do is helping young people to do their own thing. So after this call, maybe when you're with your teacher, you can have a think about what skills you have. What skills do you have that you think could help you in your future? And all of it's important because we need everybody on the planet to help look after our blue planet. Now, at the Marine Conservation Society, we have so many different jobs that I'll just quickly talk about. We have over 110 people. 110 staff that work across the whole of the UK. A lot of them work from home, but a lot of them go out and about as well. So for example, as I said, if you're really into working on computers, we have an IT team. If you're really into art, as I was, we have graphic designers and people that have created all these cool little pictures of animals that you can see in my presentation. If you're good with numbers, again, we've got loads of different jobs that are to do with money or to do with fundraising, because we're a charity, so we rely really heavily on raising money. And if you're good with people, if you like talking to people, we've got loads of different jobs in the organisation that really revolve around people. Now, what you can do to get involved is if you learn a bit more about the ocean like you've done today and share your passion. If you're really passionate about something, that's the first step. You're going to have loads and loads of time in the future to develop that passion. And if you look at our website and learn more, that would be the next step as well, because you can just read up and see what you're interested in and if you'd like to get involved in some of our beach cleans or our campaigns. And also you could maybe think about creating a project in your class. Maybe there's something you could do in your school or in your group to help our ocean, whether that's get involved in one of our campaigns or maybe start your own. Maybe in school you can do something to help reduce your plastic, for example. You could use our Good Fish Guide, which I mentioned earlier on, and that could be in school or at home. So if you do eat seafood, then go on our website and have a look at our Good Fish Guide and tell your parents and tell everyone about it. But also for the teachers as well there, and for you in schools today, you can become an ocean friendly school. So we actually have an Ocean Friendly Schools Award that we're just starting to kind of launch, and we want to help inspire the next generation of ocean conservationists. So we want to really empower you all and empower all the students watching to take action for our seas. Now, the last little thing I'm going to show you is just another little video clip. So you might have been thinking earlier on, what kind of creatures do we have round about the UK? And I showed you some photographs and some clips, but this is a bit of a deep dive. So if we all get prepared as if we're going for a dive round about the Scottish seas or the English seas or wherever you are. So put all your gear on, put your snorkel mask on, put your get your air all ready and see how many creatures you can spot on this dive. Did you spot quite a lot there? So the last thing I want to say is thank you very much for joining today. Please have a look at our website. So it's www.mcsuk.org. You can find all about what we offer schools and groups and what you can do at home as well. And hopefully today I've given you a bit of an idea of some of the routes into conservation and how I got into the job that I'm in. But just have a think about all the skills and talents that you have. They're all really important, and as I said, we need everyone to help in the fight to protect our planet. So thanks for listening, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Katie. That was such an informative and interesting talk, and we're sure our audience will be inspired to learn more about conservation and what they can do to help the planet. So I'm going to hand you over to my colleague James, because I can see there's some questions coming in, so he'll put those to you. Thank you.
Hi Katie, so thanks very much again for that talk. So first question has come from Mrs. Gracewell class, and it is, what is the most endangered marine animal right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I think one of the most endangered that comes to mind is the vaquita, which is actually a small dolphin or porpoise that lives in South America, but they're actually so rare that very few people have managed to see them, I think. But if you look it up, the vaquita, that's a good one. But so many different creatures are struggling, and not everyone likes to hear about the big, the whales and the sharks and the dolphins, but there's so many smaller creatures that are just as important. So I encourage you to learn about all the different little creatures that live around about the UK, and maybe you can find out how endangered some of them are.
Thank you. 6C is asking, what is your favourite part of the job?
The favourite part? I obviously love if I'm out on a beach and I see some dolphins or see some wildlife, but I think on a day-to-day basis, I get to speak to so many really amazing young people across the whole of the UK, and they really inspire me because they're all so enthusiastic and keen to get involved in our work. So I think the best part of my job is all the different people and all the different volunteers that I meet every week. It's great fun.
Thank you. Reed Street Primary School said, thanks so much. We're going to make our own list of special skills.
Great, go for it and share them with me if you can.
Y4CFS is asking, what is the biggest animal you have worked with?
The biggest animal I've actually worked with is an African elephant, so not marine creature. But I worked in a safari park, as I said. I had elephants, so I got to know them quite well and got to know how to look after them and care for them. But there's a lot bigger creatures in the sea, obviously, but I've not necessarily worked with them.
Mrs. Gracewell, class again, is asking, what is your favourite animal?
My favourite sea creature is a shark or a ray. So I really love, rays are kind of just like flat sharks. They're very similar. So I love sharks and rays because I used to work in an aquarium and I got to know, again, you get to know their kind of personalities. But overall, my favourite animals actually are rhino. Again, because I used to work with rhinos and I got to know their characters. They're such gentle big giants and they're really, really endangered actually as well. So, but yeah, I love rhinos.
We're getting asked about your favourite animals. Well, I know you mentioned already. Oh, this is a nice one, and it's again from Year 6 Badger Hill Academy, asking how many bud baths have you given to baby rhinos? And that's Spencer asking that.
How many mud baths? So yeah, that's random. Quite a lot. So rhinos naturally, I'll give some context. Rhinos naturally roll in the mud, and it makes them feel nice, but it also helps their skin. It kind of acts as a sunscreen, and it also repels bugs. So when they're in captivity, like in a zoo or safari park, they do that, but we would give them a mud bath behind a fence. We'd never go in with them, obviously, but we would give them a mud bath to get them up close, and it gives us a chance to do a bit of a vet check as well and just make sure they're all healthy. So I've probably given, I don't know, about 30 mud baths to a rhino, I don't know, over the years, quite a few.
Notley Green, Year 6 asking, does your job involve marine biology?
It's a good question because a lot of the young people I work with and who want to work with an organisation like us are wanting to study marine biology, and I think it is really useful and important. I didn't study marine biology. I actually didn't study biology even in the final years of school. I was more focused on history and art and stuff. But I think marine biology, I think it's really important to learn a bit about marine biology if you want to work in this area. I'm still learning. I'm learning from all my colleagues every day. And I think a lot of my colleagues who work across the Marine Conservation Society, have backgrounds that they've studied at university or up to PhD level, and there's a lot of them that are divers and things as well. So I was going to say in one of the slides earlier on, if you're a really good swimmer, for example, and you love swimming, you could maybe become a diver later in life, and that could be a really good skill if you want to work in marine conservation, obviously.
Thank you. We've got Eva asking, how many years have you been working in your current role?
So I've been in this role for just a year and a half, so not that long actually. But as I say, I'm still learning a lot every day from all my colleagues, which is good fun.
St George is asking, how many different species of marine animals are there?
Oh, I don't know if I can answer that one. I'm not going to lie. There are, well, this is the thing. I said earlier on that we know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the ocean. So we know a lot about the creatures that live round about, say, our shores, but we don't know a huge amount about the deep seas and different areas of the planet where the high seas are. So I can't answer that, but there must be millions, eh? Maybe you can try and find it
out. We've got Amelia asking, do you have lots of pets like you were like when you were younger?
I don't actually at the moment. I've had dogs as an adult. I've had dogs. I think because when I worked in the safari park and stuff, I was around animals all the time. So even though they weren't my pets, they kind of felt like they were. But yeah, I've got dogs and a cat. But no, I don't have loads and loads at the moment. But I'd really love to get some more, maybe.
We've got Hannah asking, do you go into the water much?
I don't actually personally. it's a good point to bring up, because growing up, I wasn't the best swimmer and I wasn't really enthusiastic about being in the water. I like being on boats and I like being at the beach because I grew up in the west coast of Scotland. But a lot of my colleagues, one of my colleagues, Catherine, who lives right up the north of Scotland, she goes wild swimming all the time and she's in the water and she's a diver. So a lot of the people I work with you really love it. But again, it depends where you live, I guess. Up in Scotland, we're used to the water being pretty cold, but down south, it's a bit warmer, isn't it?
Definitely, I can agree on that. We've got Anonymous has put, what advice do you have for young people who want to help?
Want to help? Well, if they want to help the ocean in particular, or the planet, if it's any sort of conservation, I think, as I've said, just try and learn a little bit more about a topic. You can read it online, or you can read it in a book, or you can speak to people. That's the first step, and then you develop an area of passion that you're really interested in. But I'd also say, no matter where you live in the whole, no matter where you live in the whole of the UK, even if you live right in the middle of the UK and you don't live near the sea, you can help the ocean. You can make a difference. I live right in the middle of Scotland, nowhere near the beach, but I know that there are rivers and streams and waterways that are all connected. So even maybe in your local area, just find your nearest water source, or your nearest blue space, whether it's a river or a loch or a lake, and just go and enjoy time there first of all. But then maybe see if in your community you could do something to help kind of look after it. Well, whether it's a litter pick or spending some time by the water. I think that's the first step. There's loads of ways people can get involved though, and as I say, I'm happy to answer any more questions about it.
You've got 6NF class asking which animals are the easiest to work with?
Which animals are the easiest to work with? I don't know. People always used to say to me, you should never work with children or animals. And I said, I think it's the adults that are the most difficult. I love working with all animals and people. I guess you've got to be careful. If you're working with big, dangerous animals, like a shark or a tiger, they're not a pet, they're a wild animal. So it's got to be really strict health and safety. Say when you're working in a zoo with these big animals, you never go into the same space as them, and they are, even though they live in captivity, they are a wild animal. So you've got to make sure you can enrich their lives with all sorts of different behaviors that they would show out in the wild. So I guess I've worked with like tigers and lions and stuff, and they were challenging in the sense that they're big scary animals, so you've got to be very careful. But I love just standing back and watching from afar and seeing them doing their thing. But yeah, I don't know, I think all the animals I've worked with have been really fun, and they're all very, very different. So they all have different characters as well. Some of them are cheeky.
We've got Josh asking, what is the world's most dangerous fish in our part of the world?
The world's most dangerous fish. I might need to look that one up and then have a think about that one. I'm not sure. I don't know. Has anyone else got any ideas in the chat? I'll need to have a think about that one. I'll try and see if I can think of something.
Next, we've got 6C asking, what is your best story about an encounter with an animal?
Well, I did love giving rhinos mud baths, as I said to you. But one of my best stories, I guess maybe when I was living in Mauritius, when I went abroad to do my course, some of the birds there, for example, are really, really rare and really endangered. So there's a bird there called the pink pigeon. So people in Britain laugh thinking it's just a pigeon. What? That's not very exciting, but it's pink. It's very pretty. But it's one of it and other birds that live there have been some, the most endangered birds in the world at point, because there were so few of them left. So I guess I've got good memories of when I was working there. I got a GPS and I was sent out on my own into the rainforest to find a nest box, which was a little box high up in a tree where the birds were nesting. And we had to go and sit and monitor it. So we had to watch these nest boxes sometimes for hours on end, which could get quite boring and stuff. But I remember sitting there watching these pink pigeons and just thinking how lucky I was, because 10, 20, 30 years ago, there were hardly any of them left. And it's just memories like that are not the most maybe exciting, but they were really meaningful in the bigger picture, because I thought, I'm really doing something to help this animal. The animal has no idea that you're helping it, but that's the point, isn't it? We know that we can help them, so we should.
Henry's asked, have you ever seen a blue lobster?
I haven't, no, but I've seen pictures of them. Has Henry seen one?
Then Notley Green is asking, which is the most endangered species have you worked with before?
Well, as I said, some of the birds that, for example, I mentioned in Mauritius, the Mauritius kestrel. So we have kestrels in the UK, obviously, a bird of prey. In this 1970s, there were only 4 of them left in the world, they thought, and now they've got up to a few hundred because of the work that's been done to look after them. So that was in Mauritius, that was the most endangered. I think in the safari park when I worked there, I guess some species of rhino are really, really endangered out in the wild. So that was one of them that was pretty endangered, and tigers as well. Sadly, so many of them are endangered, but that's why it's so important, I think, to teach them about them.
I've got an interesting question for you now. How would you rate your job in conservation out of 5? And if you weren't in marine biology, what other career would you choose and why?
Good question. I think rate my job out of 5, so 5 being the best and 0 being the worst, I presume. I genuinely rate my job 5 out of 5, because I get a lot of freedom to kind of create things that I want to do. I get to meet loads and loads of really amazing people across the UK, and as I say, I work with young people and teach them about animals, so it's pretty good. And what was the second part of the question? I've forgotten the.
If you weren't in marine biology,
yeah.
What other career would you choose and why?
I think a young person asked me this once at a careers event. They said, if you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still do the job you do? And I actually would. I would always want to work in conservation education, which is teaching people about nature and about conservation. So I would always want to work, I think, with children and young people. I've got quite a lot of experience working with young people with disabilities as well. So I'm really passionate about getting young people outdoors and spending time in nature. But again, I'm lucky I can incorporate that into the job I'm doing. But as I say, when I was 14, I wanted to be a ballet dancer. So who knows, maybe could have done that.
Elephant Class would like to know, what is the smallest animal in the sea and why are they important?
Well, there's all sorts of tiny little creatures, aren't there? But one of them, I think was mentioned maybe in the video, is phytoplankton, which is one of the smallest little parts of the food chain, which provides food for so many of the bigger creatures, but it also helps create the oxygen. So I think in that video it said that every second breath we take comes from the ocean. So that phytoplankton plays a crucial role. So if you look that up later, maybe with your teacher, you can learn a wee bit more about it. And also, I just looked up on the side, the weaver fish, for the question about a dangerous fish in UK's water, look up the weaver fish I don't know if that was Henry or who it was asked.
No, it was Henry. So there you go. We've got Mr. Hazel's class, year 3 and 4, would like to know how often you work with animals on land.
In this job, I guess not as often, but I sometimes I guess it can be in a sad way, in the sense that, if there's a river or a beach that we're cleaning, we might come across a bird or a seal or an otter or something that has maybe eaten some plastic or something. So that's very, very, very rare. But it's mostly obviously time is spent by the coast. So I see a lot of wildlife when I'm at the beaches, and there's a lot of different birds and a lot of different creatures that live round about the ocean. So I do get to see them a lot, but I guess I'm not as hands-on anymore, but that's fine. I've done loads of that.
We've got Sutton Valence Prep School asking, how much plastic ends up on our beaches? Is it certain plastics that are always found?
That's a good question. So about 80% of the rubbish that's in the ocean, they say, comes from land. So it's not been dropped off a boat, or thrown in the ocean. A lot of it comes from land. So it might be dropped on the street, it might float into a river, and then it might, float down into the sea. So obviously not all of the pollution in the ocean is plastic, but plastic's a big problem. So plastic itself is actually really durable. It's really sturdy. It's a really good thing. You know, we use it, all of us use it in our day-to-day lives all the time. It's just that it's so strong that it doesn't disappear. It just breaks down. So if a piece of plastic gets into the environment, it breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces called microplastics, and then little fish and little creatures will eat them. And then if you're eating a fish and chip supper on your dinner plate, you might have a fish that's got plastic in it. So that's why it's so important that we try and minimize it. But I think it's not necessarily one type of plastic, just all plastic. But I think it's, if you think about how you use it in your day-to-day life and you make sure you dispose of it properly or you reuse it, that's the first step, I think.
I think we've got time for one more question, but thank you for everyone, all the different questions coming today. And to end with, it's anonymous. It's asking, if you could work with only one sea creature, what would it be?
I think it would be sharks. Can I say sharks in general? I love sharks. Up in Scotland, we have the basking shark, or around about the UK, we have the basking shark. But I'm really passionate about sharks, and they've been around on the planet for hundreds of millions of years. So they're a really cool species. So I think that's my favourite.
Thank you very much. And I'll pass back to Lisa.
Thank you very much, James and Katie. Some great questions and answers there. And as you mentioned, I'm sure there are many which teachers and pupils can have a look at your website, have a look online, try some things out in the classroom and let us know about any ideas that they have. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of National Careers Week. Take care. Bye everyone.